If you've bought meat or biltong lately, you've probably asked yourself, why is everything getting so expensive? Most people blame the shop, and honestly, that is fair, because the shop is where you see the price. Well, mostly fair. Some customers just want to fight with the shop and sales assistants. But what if I told you the story can start long before the packet reaches the shelf? Sometimes it starts on a farm with a disease most customers will never see. My name is Rian, and I'm from DJ's Biltong. We make and sell biltong, drivels, cabanossi, and other South African meat snacks. So when meat prices move, we don't just see it as customers, we feel it from the shop side too. In this series, we'll be covering stories behind South African meat, biltong, braai culture, farming, recipes, histories, and all the products we love. Today we're talking about foot and mouth disease. But instead of explaining it like a textbook, let's look at how the disease affects three sides of the chain: the farmer, the shop, and the customer. Foot and mouth disease affects animals like cattle, sheep, goats, and pigs. It spreads fast. It can cause painful symptoms in livestock, and once it appears, the biggest problem is not only the sick animal, the biggest problem is movement. Can animals move? Can they be sold? Can they go to auction or to the abattoir? Can meat move through the supply chain normally? And when those answers become uncertain, the whole meat industry starts feeling it. South Africa has been battling a serious foot and mouth outbreak since 2021, and it has put major pressure on farmers, export markets, and livestock productivity. Now, one thing we need to clear up early: foot and mouth disease is not the same as hand, foot, and mouth disease in children, and this is not a human food safety panic. Foot and mouth disease is not considered a public health risk, and it's not considered a food safety threat. So when we talk about FMD affecting meat prices, we are not saying the meat on the shelf is dangerous. That is not the point. The point is that FMD disrupts the system behind the meat. It affects whether animals can move, whether farms are under restriction, if exports can continue, if abattoirs can process under controlled conditions, whether suppliers can operate normally, and whether the whole chain can keep flowing. It's also important to understand that abattoirs and wholesale suppliers have quality checks and controls in place. Animals and meat products that move through proper channels are handled under food and safety and quality control systems. So the concern is not, can people safely eat beef? The concern is, what happens to the farmer, the abattoir, the supplier, the retailer, and the customer? What happens when the whole livestock system is under pressure? That is the real story. This story starts with the farmer. So imagine you're a farmer. You've planned your season. You know when animals need to move, when they need to go to auction, when you need income coming in. Then, foot and mouth disease appears in your area. Suddenly, farming does not work normally anymore. Even if every animal on your farm is healthy, movement can still be restricted. Animals may not be able to move to another province. They may not be able to go to auction or to the abattoir. You may need inspection, quarantines, permits, vaccinations, and extra biosecurity. While all of this is happening, animals still need to eat. Workers still need to be paid. The farm still has running costs. Bills don't pause just because movement stops. So from the farmer's point of view, foot and mouth disease is not just a disease. It becomes a cash flow problem, a logistics problem, a planning problem, and sometimes a survival problem. But the problem gets even bigger, because South Africa is not farming in isolation. We export meat. In 2024, South Africa exported close to 40,000 tons of beef, worth roughly 2.5 billion rand. So when other countries lose confidence in our animal health status, they can close their markets. This has already happened. South African beef exports reportedly fell by 26% in 2025, and shipments to China dropped by 69% after China imposed restrictions linked to the outbreak. Let's think about that for a second. The disease appears here, a market closes overseas, and the pressure comes back home. That means FMD does not only affect one farmer, it can affect export income, feedlots, abattoirs, transport and logistic companies, jobs. It affects the meat industry as a whole, and it affects the price of meat here in South Africa. That is how one outbreak, one disease on a farm becomes a national economic problem. Foot and mouth disease does not just lock down animals, it can lock South African beef out of international markets. Now, customers do not buy directly from most farms. Customers meet the meat industry at the shelf, at the butcher, the store, or the biltong counter. And that's where the next part of our story continues. The shop. From the shop side, this is where things usually get uncomfortable, because when prices go up, the customer sees us. This is where our poor sales assistant usually gets it, because they don't see the farm, they don't see the export losses or the feedlot pressure, they don't see the transport costs, they only see the price on the packet or on the scale. Here at the Biltong shop, everything starts with a raw product. Before the biltong is sliced, packed, weighed and sold, someone has to buy the meat. And when the cost of meat goes up, the cost of making biltong goes up. But biltong has another problem. It loses weight. That sounds obvious, but it's one of the biggest reasons why biltong cannot be priced like raw meat. Let's use a simple example. Say raw meat costs 130 Rand per kilogram. If that meat dries down to about 45% of its original weight, then 1 kilogram of raw meat gives you 450 grams of finished biltong. So the 1 kilogram of meat becomes 289 Rand per kilogram of finished biltong. And that's before spices, before labor, packaging, electricity, rent, staff, card fees, wastage, courier costs, before anything else. Just meat. So when someone says, but the meat only costs 130 Rand per kilo, my answer is, yes, raw meat may cost that. But finished biltong is not raw meat. It is meat that has been spiced, dried, reduced in weight, sliced, packed, and prepared for sale. So when raw meat prices rise, biltong feel that increase harder, because the final product weighs less than where it started. A lot less. Now, on top of meat prices, a new problem has started. Fuel. And fuel affects almost everything. Farm transport, feed delivery, livestock movement, abattoir logistics, supplier deliveries, courier costs, custom deliveries, and even getting packaging or ingredients to the shop. In April and May 2026, South Africa saw major fuel price hikes, with petrol increasing sharply and diesel also rising. This is because of global oil and fuel price pressure linked partly to the US-Iran conflict and Persian Gulf supply concerns. So now the meat industry is not only dealing with foot and mouth disease, it's also dealing with higher transport costs. And that pressure is not only on the meat industry, it hits retail as a whole. Every product that moves by road feels diesel. Every supplier feels transport. Every shop eventually feels the pressure somewhere. So from the shop side, the challenge becomes this. How do we keep quality consistent when our input costs are moving? Do we increase prices? Do we absorb the cost? Do we reduce quality? Do we cut portions? Or do we change our supplier? None of these choices are easy. But for us, the one thing we do not want to do is reduce quality, just to keep a number looking good on a shelf. Because cheap biltong that disappoints you once can cost more trust than any price increase. Now the story reaches the customer, because the customer is not wrong for being frustrated. Food is expensive, fuel is expensive, school fees are expensive, life is expensive. So when meat goes up, people feel it. And when biltong goes up, something that used to be a simple treat can start feeling harder to justify. Customers does not see the whole chain. They do not see the quarantine or the movement restrictions. They do not see the export bans or the drying loss. They see the final price. And that's why customers ask, why is this so expensive? And that is a fair question. But the answer is not always simple. Sometimes everyone in the chain is under pressure. The farmer is under pressure, the supplier is under pressure, the shop is under pressure, and the customer is under pressure. That is the real story. There's one important thing I do not want to leave out. We have some positive news. South Africa has started moving toward mass vaccination for foot and mouth disease. The government has called on provinces to speed up vaccinations as millions more vaccine doses arrive, and the goal is to vaccinate a large part of the national herd so the disease can be controlled at scale. This goal is to vaccinate around 80% of South Africa's national cattle herd by the end of 2026. But that does not fix everything overnight. Farmers will still have pressure, the supply chain still needs time, export confidence takes time to rebuild, and fuel prices are still another pressure on the whole retail economy. But vaccines arriving is important, because it means there's a plan, there's movement, and hopefully over time, better control of the disease can help stabilize the industry. So this is the honest answer. When meat prices change, the story is usually bigger than the shop. There's a whole chain behind every packet of biltong. A farmer raised the animal, a supplier processed the product, a shop dried, sliced, packed and sold it, and the customer paid the final price. Foot and mouth disease puts pressure on the whole chain. Fuel prices puts an even bigger pressure on that chain. So the next time prices feels high, I'm not asking you to ignore it. Ask questions. Customers should ask questions. But also understand that sometimes the price on the packet has a story behind it. And at DJ's Biltong, our goal is to keep that story honest. Good quality, fair pricing, fresh product, and no shortcuts. Because good Biltong starts long before it reaches the shelf. If you found this useful or interesting, follow or subscribe to DJ's Biltong for more stories behind South African meat, recipes, Biltong, braai culture, history, and all the products we love.